Rec Room shuts down permanently. 150 million users log in to find their virtual worlds erased, their creations gone, their communities scattered. A platform valued at $3.5 billion just 5 years earlier vanishes without a buyer, without a pivot, without a path forward. 10 years of operation end in a single announcement. The numbers tell a disorienting story. This was not a niche experiment. Rec Room had scaled to the population of Russia. It had raised hundreds of millions in venture capital. It had survived the hype cycle that killed dozens of competitors. And yet, on a Tuesday morning, it simply stopped existing. The question is not whether Rec Room was popular. Popularity was never the problem. The question is how a platform with that many users, that much attention, and that much capital could fail to build a business capable of sustaining itself. Growth without monetization is not a delayed success story. It is a countdown. What collapsed here was not a product. The product worked. Users loved it. What collapsed was the assumption that scale alone could eventually be converted into revenue, that engagement could be traded for survival, that the future would solve the problems of the present. It did not. To understand how Rec Room, a social gaming platform, which was once valued at $3.5 billion but is now shutting down, with reports indicating a significant decline in perceived value and operational challenges, we need to return to the beginning, when Rec Room looked like the inevitable future of social gaming. In 2016, a Seattle studio called Rec Room Inc., formerly known as Against Gravity, launches the platform with a thesis that sounds obvious in hindsight. Social gaming should not be trapped on a single device. Founders Nick Fite and Cameron Brown, along with their team including Dan Kroyman, Bilal Orhan, Josh Worley, and John Bevis, build a platform where users can create, share, and play games. The pitch is simple. Roblox proved that user-generated content could build an empire. Virtual reality promised immersion that flat screens could never deliver. Rec Room would fuse both. The timing is exceptional. VR is shedding its experimental reputation. The search results do not specify whether Oculus, HTC, and PlayStation shipped consumer headsets specifically during the launch of Rec Room Inc., so the claim cannot be verified as accurate. Social platforms are hunting for the next frontier beyond feeds and stories. Rec Room offers something neither pure VR studios nor traditional social networks can match. A canvas where anyone can build a world and anyone can enter it, regardless of hardware. Early adopters arrive quickly. The creation tools are accessible but deep enough to reward experimentation. Communities form around custom games, virtual hangouts, and collaborative builds. The platform is not just hosting content, it is hosting culture. Users are not consuming entertainment, they are producing it, iterating on it, teaching each other how to push the system further. By the end of its first few years, Rec Room has experienced rapid growth, raising significant funding and achieving high valuation. The vision is no longer theoretical, it is operational. The infrastructure is live, the community is growing. The timing could not have been better. Then the pandemic hit. Script, March 2020. The world locks down. Schools close. Offices empty. Physical social life halts. Overnight, digital platforms become the primary venue for human connection. Rec Room is perfectly positioned. While competitors scramble to add social features, Rec Room already has the architecture in place. Persistent worlds, voice chat, collaborative creation, cross-platform access. Users flood in. The growth is staggering. Registered accounts surge past 150 million. Engagement metrics spike. Session times extend. Community activity intensifies. Investors take notice. The narrative shifts from cautious optimism to certainty. This is not just a VR platform anymore. This is the Metaverse, before the term becomes a punchline. Media coverage amplifies the momentum. Rec Room is framed as a winner in a winner-take-all race. December 2021. The company closes a funding round at a $3.5 billion valuation. The number is not speculative. It reflects genuine belief. Venture capital is convinced that user growth at this velocity will eventually translate into sustainable revenue. The assumption is that monetization can be optimized later, that scale creates optionality, that the hard part is already solved. But the unit economics tell a different story. Each new user costs more to serve than they generate in revenue. The platform is not approaching profitability, it is moving further from it. The growth charts look like validation. In reality, they are masking a structural problem that compounds with every new account created. Beneath the momentum, the business model is not working. 150 million users, $3.5 billion valuation, and costs that exceed revenue every single quarter. The gap is not narrowing, it is widening. Rec Room's free-to-play model, designed to lower barriers and maximize growth, fails to convert engagement into income at the rate required to sustain operations. Virtual goods sell, but not enough. Premium subscriptions exist, but adoption remains thin. The platform is viral, but virality is not a business model. The market begins to shift. Roblox, already dominant in user-generated content, adds VR support. The niche Rec Room carved out is no longer exclusive. Players who might have chosen Rec Room for its cross-platform flexibility now have alternatives with deeper ecosystems and stronger monetization infrastructure. The competitive moat erodes. Then the broader VR industry cools. Meta, after pouring billions into Horizon Worlds, scales back its metaverse ambitions. The signal is clear. Even infinite capital cannot force adoption of social VR at the scale required to justify the investment. If Meta cannot make it work, the path forward for smaller players narrows dramatically. Rec Room's leadership faces a brutal realization. The claim correctly states that Rec Room was popular with over 150 million users, but struggled to achieve sustainable profitability, which led to its shutdown in 2026. Users love the platform. They spend hours inside it. But love does not pay server costs. Engagement does not cover salaries. The assumption that scale would eventually unlock profitability has been tested for years. It has failed. The company has one option left: cut deep and hope to survive. Script, August 25, 2025. Against Gravity cuts its workforce in half. The layoffs are not a course correction, they are an admission. The company cannot afford to operate at its current scale. The bet that user growth would eventually solve the revenue problem has failed. The $3.5 billion valuation is now a historical artifact, disconnected from any operational reality. The cuts do not stabilize the situation. By early 2026, additional layoffs follow. Each round shrinks the team responsible for maintaining a platform serving 150 million users. The infrastructure remains expensive. The content moderation demands remain constant. The server costs do not decline in proportion to headcount. The company is trying to sustain a massive operation with a skeleton crew and a business model that never worked. June 1, 2026. Against Gravity announces the permanent shutdown of Rec Room. There is no acquisition, no asset sale, no plan to preserve user-generated content. 150 million accounts lose access to everything they built. Virtual worlds that took years to construct disappear. Communities that formed over a decade scatter. The platform does not transition into maintenance mode, it simply ends. The valuation collapses from $3.5 billion to effectively zero. No buyer emerges because there is nothing to buy. The technology is not proprietary enough. The user base is not monetizable enough. The brand carries no value without the infrastructure to support it. What looked like a durable asset evaporates. This is not a story about bad execution. The product worked. This is a story about a financial structure that required miracles to survive. So what actually killed Rec Room, and what does it teach us? Rec Room's collapse exposes a strategic blind spot that defined an entire era of venture-backed platforms, treating user growth as validation of the business model itself. 150 million users became proof of success, when in reality, they were proof of distribution. Growth, engagement, and monetization are three separate problems. Solving one does not solve the others. The pandemic-era valuation environment rewarded scale above all else. Investors bet that massive user bases would eventually find a path to profitability, that the sheer volume of attention could be converted into sustainable revenue. Rec Room raised hundreds of millions on that premise, but free-to-play social platforms require conversion rates most cannot achieve. The gap between engagement and income is not a temporary friction. For many platforms, it is structural. The VR and Metaverse hype created a false sense of inevitability. If the future was virtual, then platforms like Rec Room were simply early. The market would mature, adoption would follow, revenue would come. But inevitability is not a business plan. When Meta scaled back its Metaverse investments, the signal was unmistakable. Even unlimited capital cannot force a market into existence. Rec Room ran for 10 years without achieving profitability. The company was not failing slowly. It was succeeding at everything except the one thing that mattered. The users were real. The engagement was real. The business model was not. So here is the question that should unsettle every founder and investor watching this. How many other platforms right now are running the same clock?